Unless there's a real
Hey, I'm not
dramatic
insisting.
pause.
No, no, I
I
understand.
don't want to do that, especially if they've got to make this. Thank you. If I could have your attention, we're going to be starting in a moment, actually about 2 moments. But if you would like to address the council on any subject that we're going to be dealing with this evening, we'll take up to 5. The agenda says 6 minutes, but I think there's some ambiguity, some questions there. We're going to allow up to 15 minutes and 5 people. You can, if you want to speak to address the council, please see Tracy Colvert, our clerk, who's right outside the door over there. Okay. Now we're probably about a minute and a half. Thank you.
So I will send a note to Tricia tonight and copy you and just ask her if she could please rotate some times. I mean, I think it varies. It's supposed to be weekdays, but then if you have like a first Friday or a Saturday to visit businesses versus residents.
Right, gotcha. And you got my message. You got my message. Oh, that the I'd like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting of the Bloomington City Council to order, please. And we're going to start with public comment, and we have one individual who has requested to address the council, and for a maximum of up to 3 minutes, and I think he knows the routine. Mr. Bruce Meeks, come forward. Thank you.
I request that the timer be stopped for a moment, and I'd like to address the parliamentarian directly.
I'm sorry, what did you say? Could you repeat your point?
Will the timekeeper please stop the timing? Since I've been granted the floor, I'm making a parliamentary point of information and a point of order directly to the parliamentarian because Chapter 2, Section 17 gives me no other choice but to address the parliamentarian directly. I seek to obtain and offer information on the matter of parliamentary law and the city code of this organization
Okay,
bearing
well,
the business at hand.
before we get to that, I
Primary
don't know that
question.
I don't know we're going to vary the rules. We'll ask our legal counsel. What specifically are you asking the legal counsel?
May I continue?
You need to, if
Yes,
you,
well, that's
okay,
what I'm
we have
gonna-
3 minutes, Bruce. Okay, unless we're going to grant something as an exception.
Seek to
Go ahead.
obtain information and offer information on parliamentary law and the city code. The primary question is, does 5 minutes for public comment as it appears on the agenda meet Chapter 2, Section 17 of the city code or violate it? In addition, 2 previous agendas shown above here have had comment of 5 minutes and 6 minutes. It's my hope that you will grant the parliamentarian will
Okay, yeah, I can also clarify that normally this public comment is really not normally supposed to be an engagement with the council. So let's make that clear. Okay, it's supposed to be something. We'll waive this for this point, Bruce, but you're only supposed to, or citizens are supposed to make comments, and we're not supposed to respond. In this situation, though, what I will tell you is that we did have a discussion about this, that the 6 minutes is something that there's an ambiguity, so we in the future will have 15. That's why I announced before the meeting began that we would be having up to 15 minutes of public commentary so that there's consistency with the ordinance. And Mr. Boyle, would you want to clarify that?
The third paragraph of Section 15 talks about meetings of committee of the whole and specifically references the public comment, Section 17, paragraph sub 5. And that talks about there being 15 minutes, well actually a number of, as many as 5 speakers for public comment with a limit of 3 minutes on each speaker. So with that in mind, the mayor and I did have a discussion. 6 minutes was not the, we just talked about wanting to make sure that 3 minutes was available for as many as 5 speakers as referenced in Section 15.
Okay. So I think that's what that clarifies. If you want to, I think you've probably got about 1 more minute if you want to make any other statements, but I think that's what we're addressing, and we want to make sure that that's clear. Anything else?
Well, I don't think you follow parliamentary procedure on how you decided it before the meeting, but that's for another time. I'm not for the tax referendum for the soccer fields. I think that, it should be a tax referendum for the soccer fields, and the same thing for the utility tax, amusement tax, and if it gets any tread, the motor fuel tax.
I wonder if we could just, if you tell us for the record, I neglected this, Alderwoman Schmidt reminded me. What's your name and full address?
Bruce Meeks. I need it though. 1402 Wright Street, Bloomington.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
And I think there's a problem with too much control right now of the agenda items by the mayor and the city manager based upon the ordinance that was adopted in 2012. I'd like the committee of the whole to bring this back to the committee and have a discussion about this. There's no opportunity for minority members of the city council to get anything on the agenda as it stands. With the committee of the whole, work session group, and the city council, there are no subcommittees for anything to come populate through in a minority way for any of the council members to bring forth to the council any new ideas from the citizens. Thank you.
Okay. Since we violated the rules a little bit here, I will go ahead and clarify. Actually, Bruce, that's just simply not true. If we have 2 council members who want to put something on the agenda and they want to come to me, I'll see if anybody objects and we go forward. But anyway, we're done. Thank you.
That's what the code says.
And we're going to move right along. Also, to clarify, we have 3 items, 30 minutes apiece, and given that, I'm going to have to insist on a fairly tight timetable, and tying to the 30 minutes for each. The first is proposed soccer complex and community center project and request for public funding, and this is a 0.25% home rule sales tax increase. And Dave Majors and Jeff Tinnervin are going to be presenting in approximately 15 minutes, and then we're going to have about 15 minutes for council reaction. And so go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening. I don't need that. Thankfully so.
Mousetrap.
I think you're going to need a new mouse for the computer now.
I think it's dead now.
We appreciate the opportunity to come and talk with you tonight about two projects that have been joined as one that we believe are very important to this community, very important to the youth of this community, and equally as important, and maybe most importantly, to the at-risk youth in this community. That being the community soccer complex and the new community center that is being proposed this evening. My name is Dave Majors. I'm here with Jeff Tinnervin tonight. We represent K, Citizens Advocating for Area Youth, the group that is supporting and sponsoring these two projects, and there are a great many of those behind me here this evening. We have passed out to you previously executive summaries of our two projects and our project books. My intention tonight is not to go through page by page and drain those, particularly in 15 minutes, but you will find a lot of the detail there, including the members of K and the members of the community that are supporting this project, both individuals and businesses. We intend tonight to highlight what's in that book for you and be here to answer questions you may have, and most importantly to understand with the council the way to move this project forward. As we talk about the project, I would like to remind you that from our perspective, and I hope from yours, we know that you have a number of budget constraints. You have a very difficult challenge on your hands, and you have a number of priorities that you have to address. We would like you to consider these projects at the top of the priorities, not as swimming pools and soccer fields and basketball courts, but more importantly, the structured and organized activities that they represent for the youth of this community and the impact that those structured activities have on the future of the youth and the future of the community at large. Jeff and I are very representative of the members of K. We both grew up in this community. We feel the need to give back in a community that has given so much for us. Neither of us nor the members of K have any personal financial involvement in this transaction, as rumors may have run rampant was the case. And as a matter of fact, Jeff and I and most other members of K have put in a considerable amount of personal time and personal financial resources with no expectation of return of that. We would just like to see things that are needed in the community come to fruition. The books that you have will provide an overview of the project. They will talk about the support we have from the community for the project. And also included in the discussion tonight, we want to talk with you briefly about need, and as I mentioned, be available to answer any questions that you might have. Jeff and I are kind of an interesting combination. We both grew up in the community, but we came from different backgrounds. We started these projects separately many years ago. The soccer project, I've been involved in the soccer project since its initiation over 6 years ago. Jeff has been involved in the community center project almost equally as long, and I can assure you that both of these projects have had a lot of starts and stops. They've had a lot of fine-tuning, and they've been fully vetted by all the constituencies and the interested parties along the way to get to the point where we are at today. I'm going to start by briefly describing for you the soccer complex project, and we'll talk a bit about need. I have Julia Turner with me here this evening that's representing the soccer community, and then I'll ask Jeff to talk about the community center, and he will introduce some additional speakers that he has as well. The soccer complex is depicted on the easel in the rear. I know you can't see that. There are pictures of that in the book as well, describing the complex in its entirety. The facility is 26 fields, championship caliber, various sizes, both practice and championship size. 2 of the fields are artificial turf for all-weather play. 9 of the fields are lighted, 9 are irrigated. It has all the appropriate pathways, paved pathways, parking for 1,000, and appropriate facilities as well. Concession facilities, bleachers, restrooms, all the things you might assume were needed by a soccer facility. This soccer facility, as I said, started about 6 years ago. The location that we are proposing for the soccer facility is a piece of property that is just west of Interstate 7455 and just south of College Avenue. For those of you that grew up in this community, you'll remember the old shopping center that was out on the west side of town. It would be just to the north of that shopping center, which I think was an antique mall for a while as well. That piece of property was actually the first piece of property and the last piece of property that we looked at. We looked at it at first, thought that the topography was too difficult to build soccer fields. If you're familiar with that piece of property, it's rather rolling. We looked at properties in North Normal out on White Oak Road, North and West Normal on College Avenue, and properties on the east side of town as well. After looking at about 5 different properties over 5 years, came back and settled on this particular piece of property. What we liked about it is it was in the enterprise zone. It's on the west side of town. We believe we need to continue to develop this community on the west side of town as well. It has easy access from the freeways, and it also has easy access to hotels and restaurants just down the road to the south in Bloomington. What we also like about this project and the combination of the two projects is being in the enterprise zone. This is an opportunity for the city and the town as you look at the community center and the soccer complex located in Normal, the community center in Bloomington, to cooperate on a joint proposal that we feel is pretty important to the overall community as well. Yep.
You have 9 minutes
So
approximately
I'm
for a
going
collective
to
presentation.
turn it over now
Thank
to
you.
Julia, who's going to talk for just a minute
Thank you.
about the need for soccer facilities in the community.
Literally a minute. I'm Julia Turner. I'm a recovering soccer mom. I no longer have children who play soccer, but I've been very involved in it their whole lives. As you guys know, we have a very active soccer community. PCSL has currently this year 1,800 players. Then there are club players that are about 520 or so. There are nearly 200 adults that also play in leagues here. So when you look at that's a large group. You've got 2,700 altogether. They currently have one tournament out at the airport fields or the community fields. And that tournament last year had 170 teams, which equates to about 6,000 people, 6 to 7,000 people. And this year they're limiting it to 140 because 170 was crazy and it's all volunteer run. And really limited space. If you've ever been out there when that tournament's going on, you never want to go back out there again because it's very crowded. With the new facility, we predict easily that there could be 4 to 6 tournaments without really interfering with the rec play, and that's really what we want this facility to be, centered around the rec, but it would be there to, it could be enhanced with the tournament play. And it could also attract ODP, which is the Olympic Development Program. They're always looking for a home, and they love Bloomington Normal because it's central. They try to bring in the St. Louis area and the southern area as well as Chicago, and they have really been looking for years for us to do something here to do that. And that's where I'll stop and let Jeff take over from there.
Yeah. Thanks, Julia. I'm Jeff Tinnerman. Thanks for allowing us to have some time this evening. David and I have been working on this a long time. I started out looking at a new YMCA facility and got involved in that because I was at the Y when I was a kid. And as we got involved in this, we saw there was a lot bigger need, and we got involved with other groups, Western Avenue, Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and saw a tremendous need to their physical facilities and also to programming. And so what we're proposing is a community center that would be used by all these groups and possibly some other groups, and be able to combine some programming so we actually could reach more kids. And also we have senior groups, et cetera, that would be using this facility. You can see the facility back there. What we have proposed is out at the old Great Escape building, and there's a lot of reasons why we proposed that. One of the biggest reasons was we need to be able to get these kids outside. And across the street is R.T. Dunn Fields, and so we need to be able to get them outside for summer camps and et cetera, and there's football fields there and baseball fields, et cetera. What I think is most important here is the group of people that we have put together and the people that have gotten together to cooperate on this and talk about this are people that would probably never sit down and talk before. East Side, West Side, all these different groups. And you will see a letter in there from these non-for-profits about the group of people they've been working with to do some joint programming. I think that's really important. The details about what would be in the community center are in those books. There's very big detail in the bigger books we brought tonight. Um, and I think that, there's been too much talk about um, how to fund this. I'm not sure that we know exactly how to fund it. We think there's a need. I think there's a great letter in there from our sheriff about how this would impact youth and crime in the community. I think that's really important. Um, and I challenge you to talk to these people at these non-for-profits and find out how we're not taking care of the youth here. This is about investing in our future. So I know we're short on time, so we'll be available for questions now or later, and I'd like to have Reverend Rayford come up and speak for a minute.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you for the opportunity to address you again, and I will be brief. This project needs to move forward. It needs to be approved by this council. I say that because this is so much bigger than the brick and the mortar and the paper you'll see behind us. This is not an expense. This is truly an investment that'll go far beyond the buildings that exist now, the ones we'll put up. This is an investment in our children, because right now our at-risk children are finding ways to fit in. They're finding ways to be significant. They're finding ways to be a part of a bigger group, and they're not the positive groups we want them to be a part of. This is a safe place, being the soccer complex and also the community center, for our kids to come and feel like they're a part of something significant. This is not where we're just asking you to spend or approve 0.25% for no reason. This is an investment that'll bring about a huge return. Before we came in here to this council, I spoke with one of the deacons at the church I serve. This weekend, he is going to spend $500 in one day for 3 people to go to a tournament. One day. Imagine if he were to stay here at home and bring all of those thousands of others back to this community and spend the money in this community. So if it's financial in nature, it's an investment because we get a great return. But the greatest return is with our children, because now they have a place to fit in and to belong. And what is really beautiful about this comprehensive project is that it is comprehensive. It brings all of those entities together that would not normally be talking. Rather than becoming sacred silos apart, they're working together, serving the same people. It eliminates that big brick wall that divides us so easily. And now it's becoming a bridge. I would love for this council, one I'm proud of, to be the one that extends the olive branch to the people across the street in Normal and says, let's do something so big that neither one of us can do it by ourselves. Wouldn't it be nice for this council to be the one that said, we can do this together? Wouldn't it be real cool, just off the chain in Jesus' name, that this council got together and said, we can do something that our children can be proud of? Rather than spend money trying to correct them, let's invest money and grow them properly. Give them a safe place to be who they're created to be. I urge you to invest, not just in the brick and the mortar, but in the lives of our children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time. As we've said in a very short period of time, we believe these 2 projects are very important to the community. As Reverend Rayford said, it's very important to us and to the youth of this community and to our future that we provide a safe place to provide for these kinds of activities and structured events for our children. And as you know, soccer is a growing sport in this community. We also have an issue with soccer in this community in that the current soccer field is going away in a very short years. And without a new facility, we're going to send a lot of kids back to the street with no place to play. Lastly, I would encourage you to go through the booklets, look very hard at the list of supporters of this project, both businesses and individuals. Read the letters that we provided to you that they have written. Understand not only the impact this has on our youth, but the support that these projects have from the community. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. With 1 minute to spare. So we've got an extra minute for discussion on the council. If I could see who on the council would like to speak If I see Alderwoman Schmidt, only Alderwoman Schmidt?
Oh my, okay, 15 minutes?
Yeah, and Alderman Black after Fruin, Millawambwe, okay. All right, so let's say, okay, about 3 minutes apiece, starting with you, Alderwoman Schmidt.
I don't know if I'll take my 3 minutes, but, I think we're all struggling a lot with this particular funding proposal. As Mr. Tinervan said, though, it's bigger than just the funding proposal, and I think it's radiantly clear to me and to many of us up here that this you have identified a couple of very strong needs in our community. Obviously, we do need to address the soccer complex issue, and I know from my own service in my ward and around downtown and West Bloomington that it's abundantly clear that this is an investment in the future. And it's so encouraging to see the collaboration and sort of the consortium that has built out of these conversations. And if this is not the right funding solution, I think we need as a city and community, including actually the county and Normal, and all of you to come together to try to find a solution, because I certainly know what we spend with children who are not in the place that they need to be, and it is an investment. And I know exactly why you asked Pastor Rayford to speak. He was good job. So I just would urge us to, whatever we do with this particular funding proposal, I would just urge us to take all of the wonderful good that's come out of these conversations and come together and try to figure out how to move this forward.
Thank you. I think it's, I can't maybe speak for all the council, but I think I can, and that is that in terms of the specifics, we know the Y can't stay where they currently are, and we know we've got to do something about our soccer fields. So that, there's no question, and I'm glad that people have come together and are working on this. The question is, of course, how, and is it a specific way? And so I believe Alderman Fruin, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple quick comments. I think maybe very much aligned with what Karen was saying, but I think there's so much good in this, and I think the real question is how the financing is accomplished. And the intergovernmental cooperation, specifically the support and uh, help it provides to our west side. I'm repeating what everybody's already said, but the youth of our community, when you think about all of our discussions the last couple of months, we've been talking about the tax burden that we're going to put on the next generation. And we've got to put some balance in that and put that community activity into them. But whether you call it tourism or visitors, I mean, this has terrific potential to bring people in our community, bring those out-of-town dollars to help support this through our motel and food and beverage and so forth and so on. I think we're all a little bit skeptical about how this financing can get done, but we always talk about how smart we are as a community. We've got 2 universities here. We've got a lot of bright people, and I think if we put our heads together, we ought to be able to get this done, especially when we're forced to because of the vacation on the airport property. And we just need to invest in this in some capacity, in some form.
Thank you. That's the Alderman Black.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, everyone, for coming. I always enjoy getting to see when we have a large crowd out in one of our meetings, especially a committee of the whole meeting. I don't think we've ever had a crowd this size at a committee of the whole meeting.
Not since you and I have been on, but that's
right.
Limited time.
So I appreciate you guys coming out, and it's good to see the support that we have here. And I know I talked to Jeff a couple months back about this proposal. I know I've received a number of emails over the past several months regarding this this whole proposal. And I guess kind of some feedback from me would be, I'm very sympathetic to soccer. In fact, I think you can look at the River Trails Park District. I scored on my own goal back when I was playing youth soccer. So a lot of talent up here. I probably could help to do some soccer practice. The feedback I've been getting, though, from the ward that I represent on the west side has been overwhelmingly negative. I would say that this book here being one side's a positive support, I would say I'd have probably almost 2 times to 3 times the size of this book of people who have not bought into this idea yet. And I see where the proposal is coming from. I see where it's going, and I don't know what kind of vote we're going to see here. But I think what's lacking is the public at large buy-in. I know there's a couple of venues with which to get a sales tax increase to support this type of proposal. One of which is to come through the councils, another which is to go through public referendum. And I think that getting that community buy-in is something that is going to be critical moving forward. The letters are great. A lot of the commentary that I've heard from people who have been supportive are, very vocally, strongly supportive of it, but that's one voice. And we got a lot of tough challenges coming our way. It's very hard for me to justify going back to my ward and saying, hey, we're going to support a soccer complex when streets and infrastructure are failing. We need to put off that pothole for another few months. So to me, we talk about priorities, we talk about what's important. For me, investing in the youth, making sure that we can bring that return on investment back into the community, incredibly important. Community centers, incredibly important. And I think that the public buy-in has to be that next step. And so if I were to be given a preference, I would say probably on a public referendum, that'd be the way to go and really be able to get that oomph that says, yes, the community is behind it. They want to see this, and I would support it 100%. So that's my commentary. Thank you.
Alderman Lawamboy.
Thank you. This was a very difficult thing for me to take a look at because anybody that knows me knows that my family is all about soccer. I grew up in a place where people played soccer. We didn't have football. We didn't have baseball. All of my kids do play soccer. So it's a situation where I really had to separate between my passion for the sport, and I'm only speaking to soccer because that's what resonating right now. So I had to separate between my passion for the sport, but at the same time, reason and some of the things that Alderman Black has brought forward, such as sewer issues and roads and things like that. So I find um, it's very, very, very difficult. It's a very difficult decision that we would have to make, and I would really be looking at more creative ways of funding this. I haven't heard yet. I know recently we talked to folks from Miller Park who have looked into fundraising as providing seed money in order to move their projects forward. So I'm kind of curious about other things that have been done. I don't disagree with the project. I think it would be fantastic. But I'm kind of curious and looking for creative ways for us to be able to support this because I'm also passionate about the youth. I mean, I have 4 kids, so that's pretty obvious. Um, but I do know that we have quite a few challenges looking at us, and on March 22nd, actually, we'll be talking about some of those challenges as well. So that's my initial reaction right now, but definitely not something to put back on the shelf. You can still look at it.
Just to clarify for everyone in the audience, March 22nd is where we have our budget meeting, and we've got about an $8 million shortfall that we've got to figure out how to fix. That's what Alderman Owamboy was referring to. Anyone else? We've actually got about 8 more minutes. Any other reactions? Kevin?
Just a couple short comments. I've had some folks, developers, offer some green space that would be room for some soccer fields and offered to maintain that in terms of mowing. The only thing that would be required is that the community or the soccer club or organization would come in and maintain and secure their own property. I think possibly that there's probably a good chance that there's a lot of goodwill in the community, that we could provide an awful lot of this throughout the community. And from a look at 30,000 feet down, like we always try to say, I think it'd probably be better for the community to have the activity throughout the community instead of isolated out on the west side or in Normal. And probably the same thing is true with the possibility of a new YMCA. I'm not sure that the location really suits the need, and certainly the expense is is beyond what we can even imagine at this point. I think there's probably other avenues to meet those needs, at least on the short term. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Alderwoman Stearns.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. You've certainly put forth an amazing effort, and we do appreciate and understand that in our, thinking that this is a very, well-planned and executed plan, and we're taking it very, very seriously, so we appreciate your presence here tonight. There really isn't any way to explain the pressure that's on our budget with the city of Bloomington this year. Tomorrow, as you all know, there will be a sales tax referendum, 1% sales tax. There will be, I believe, a $1 a month sewer tax added by the Bloomington Normal Water Reclamation District. There's a number of tax increases on our plate that have been proposed by city management that are going to push many of our utility taxes to almost to the legal limit. And in 5-6 years, the way I see our pension shortfall, our pension obligation is going to double. So that puts tremendous pressure on our ability to operate as a city. And I would urge you to, if you're interested, come by our budget workshop on the 22nd. It's an open meeting. Hopefully we'll stream it. That's my hope on the internet, in case you're interested. But it all comes down to numbers, and right now those numbers are bleak in the city. A referendum, I think, would be a fine way to go. Advisory referendum would be very easy to set up, and I too would encourage that as a way to move forward. But thank you very much.
And just to clarify, the next time an advisory referendum could be put on the ballot would be in the November elections, because obviously tomorrow is the primary. Right. So anyway, other questions, comments? All right. Thank you all, and thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next item, which is our comprehensive plan. And Vasu, I think you're coming forward. Right. Okay, well, I ain't gonna let that shit happen.
Sorry about the delay.
Yeah. Just so that everyone knows, our McLean County Regional Planning Commission Executive Director is going to be presenting the process for our comprehensive plan and discussion of the scope of the work and council expectations and project timeline. And she's going to give us some time also for questions and comments, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
And so we've got you starting at 6:03. Go ahead.
Yes. Honorable Mayor and Council and Mr. Manager, thank you so much for allowing this time to present.
Excuse me. We're continuing a meeting. Excuse me. If you want to have discussions, please go out in the hall. We really do. We have a long agenda. We need to continue this, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will try to wrap the entire comprehensive planning process that would take 18 months in 15 minutes. So I will do my best. Up here, as you can see, I think back. What we are proposing here is a comprehensive plan in 4 phases. Phase 1 is the existing conditions analysis, which we are in right now. It takes about 4 to 5 months. And we want to do the community visioning phase next and start in July for about 4 or 5 months. We could have gone either way with community visioning and existing condition analysis parallel, but we wanted the weather to be nice and predictable, so we kind of pushed it to July. And then the phase 3 is strategic planning, which again will strategic planning and phase 4, which is plan making and adoption, together will take about 6 to 8 months. Existing condition analysis is really a snapshot of what we have here today. And it's what we have here today. In this phase, we are going to look at all the plans and studies done by the city or any other community partners, as well as any state and federal plans and policies that would affect us. Um, the second part of this phase will be data collection and analysis. Believe it or not, there is more data out there than what we know to deal with. We are definitely going to use census data, but there is a lot of information that's with the city that we are going to use to tell our own story. For example, this is the information that we have based on our own resources. It's analysis on ownership information. Census estimates based on 2010 census says that we have about 68% ownership and 32% rental. Our local data shows that we have about 63% ownership and 37% rental. That's nearly 5 percentage points difference. Our local data helps us tell our story much better and focus on areas of need. And it also helps us narrow in on particular areas. For example, West Bloomington is quite the opposite of ownership versus rental here, 47 ownership and 53% rental. Anyway, this is to say that this entire planning process is going to be evidence-based with the information that we have available, and we are gathering more and more data every day, and by end of this phase, you will see an existing conditions report that outlines all of this. We are again in a very initial stage. We are gathering data. We anticipate this phase to end in June, and we'll be back here in front of the City Council and Planning Commissions to present that information. We are going to request the city to form 2 committees to lead this entire effort. One is the steering committee, which we are working with the city on. This will be city's political leadership, which would be you, city administrations, and the advisory councils and commissions. Both these councils, steering committee and the advisory councils, are very important for this process to go forward. The definition of comprehensive plan is changing rapidly. At one point, comprehensive plan was more about land use regulations and zoning, but throughout the United States, people are using comprehensive plan as an excuse to bring in all aspects of planning together, like health and social aspects, and everything should be reflected in comprehensive planning. And for that to happen, the buy-in should be from the get-go. And we encourage both these committees to be formed as soon as possible so that we can be presenting frequently and getting direction from these 2 committees to make sure that we have the buy-in. Excuse me. The second phase is the community visioning. So once we gather the existing data, we are going to have an extensive outreach. The city has expressed deep interest in making sure that we reach out to people and give fair opportunity to everyone. And the goal of this outreach is to at least try and reach 30% of city residents. When we first started talking about this goal, it seemed far-reaching. With the Bloomington Bike Plan, which I will talk about in a little bit, we have seen some very good results. It is a very particular segment of planning, but we have received so far about 700 plus 700 plus people respond to that. So we are very positively encouraged by that type of response. We think if we understand the community well and try to make it easy, we definitely can get them engaged. And the session before me was a very good example, and this, an organized effort can reach out to everybody. We are going to understand the community. We are going to see, where we should be reaching out instead of late night meetings. We'll probably um, reach out to community groups where they are instead of having them come to our meetings. We definitely are going to use tools to educate people on importance of comprehensive planning. Excuse me. And also encourage by providing various opportunities to participate, but constantly evaluate who is participating and what age groups and demographics and things like that. Some of the education tools, here is an example from a community in Portland, Oregon. Near Portland, Oregon. They've done a very good outreach effort. We are taking a lot of inspiration from this project. We are putting together a project website that would make it easy for people to learn, participate, and provide comments on the work that was created by various working groups and stuff. Promotional video, I know one of the joint council meetings I did showcase a promotional video that really encourages people to participate. It showcases the city leadership, political leadership, just to bring that energy into the community to say this is why you should be part of this process. We definitely want to do something like that, and we hope that we can get your support for that project. We're going to use variety of encouragement tools and avenues. Like I said, we are not going to ask people to come to 7 p.m. meetings or late night meetings. We'll be where the community is. For example, there are creative ways now to reach out to the community. This is a picture from one of the community events where there is a whiteboard where people can just go ahead and outline what they like or don't like about the city or what they would like to improve. And various sticker programs. We are going to work closely with all of you to kind of tag along with any of the public outreach efforts that you have in your individual wards. We are going to work very closely with the school districts to reach out to that population. Right now with the Bloomington bike planning effort, something that we have realized is the younger population between the ages of 14 to 24, we don't have a huge participation in that area. This is a good heads up for us. We have started our conversations with the school districts, and we are also working with the 4-Hers to get younger people participate in the planning process. The timeline for this again is about 4 to 5 months. We want to kind of keep it short and sweet. We don't want to drag this process too long. So this keeps everything in perspective. People know how their how their input is condensed. At end of this phase, we are going to submit a community vision plan to the councils to see what we have heard up until this point. The third phase is after we dreamed about what we want, we have to do a reality check. So that's what we're going to do in this phase. We're going to identify ways on how we can make that vision, how we can put the vision into action. This phase, we are going to study some of the peer communities that are similar to Bloomington. And using various metrics, these are some of the communities that we've identified. They're different states, different cities, but something that is common is that they're either growing like Bloomington is, they're part of Twin Cities, they probably have a landlocked school district, things that are kind of somewhat common to what we have here. Again, why are we doing this? We probably can draw from some good examples. Here is an example from Kalamazoo. They have a landlocked school district. I'm sorry, Kalamazoo doesn't, but they actually had issues with education, the level of education, reducing population and stuff. So a very creative way of addressing that was this Kalamazoo Promise. They used their lottery money to fund anybody that's using their anybody that went through their high school system, and they funded their college education. The unforeseen effect of that is increase in population by 25%. Again, this is just one example of how we can find communities across United States and how they're addressing their situations. Similarly, other best practices, an example from Michigan, Pop-Up Hood, where they're trying to take some old dilapidated buildings and, opening up business incubators. New York inspired, New York City got inspired from this idea and they said, let's just try this in Broadway. They closed Broadway with orange cones and threw in some lawn chairs to test out how this temporary situation is working. And it worked out pretty good, so now they're going back and after 2 years, doing some permanent improvements. So I guess, we can't use any situation as is, but we can make it our own if we get inspired from the right projects. As part of this, to make it into manageable portions, we are going to divide into, we are getting ready to divide, the initial phase of this will be 7 working groups, but after the community visioning phase, if we identify other areas that community want addressed, we'll have additional action areas. Under each of these action areas identified here, there will be more than one working group. For example, neighborhoods could have 3 different working groups, one on housing, one on education, and one on neighborhood identity. Each one of these, we started identifying what could be the potential working groups and who should participate in there. This down here is a sample of what a working group could look like. Um, And last but not the least, plan making and adoption. This phase and the strategic planning phase will overlap quite a bit. Each time any action area has made progress, we are going to come in front of the planning commissions and the councils to show where we are and then take your suggestions and take it back to the drawing board and make appropriate changes. These last 2 phases will be about anywhere between 6 to 8 months. We are going to start assembling working groups along with the community visioning phase in July. These working groups will meet physically once a month, but we are also going to use technology and have virtual meeting spaces for them between meetings. This way we won't, if people have real jobs, they can't be at these meetings. If they're interested in participating, they'll still have the opportunity to do so. But that's a quick overview of this. I'm going to leave a little bit more time for question and answers. Thank you so much.
And I wanted to see if who would have questions, starting with Alderman Sage, others, Alderman Lauer, I see, Alderman Fruin, Alderman Black, and Alderwoman Stearns. Is that, I see, okay. All right. So we can do approximately 3 minutes apiece, starting with Alderman Sage and then moving to Alderman Lauer.
Vasu, thank you, first of all, for coming tonight. I enjoyed very much your presentation when we had the joint meeting over in the Government Center,
Thank you.
and was particularly interested in your use of some technology going forward. And so thanks for that. I guess a couple of perhaps more, maybe a philosophical question and a process question, because I'm thinking back to some conversations that we had around the time when the comprehensive plan was last updated back in 2005, I think, and then some conversations we had with Paul Russell way back when this was first introduced. So the philosophical question is, does McLean County Regional Planning, do you see this as Bloomington's comprehensive land use plan? In other words, do you see us owning this plan?
Oh, absolutely. And we want to see more and more Bloomington's involvement in this, which is again why I stress the fact that steering committee and action advisory council should really spearhead this process. We provide the technical support. We would love to see more uh, the face of this plan being the city leadership
Okay.
and political
So
leadership.
more, if I'm understanding, more facilitating and enabling, if you will,
Absolutely.
you know. The other thing is I know I've been approached by some citizens who would like to be part of this process.
Hmm.
And where would you suggest, and this is probably more the process question,
Absolutely.
where would you suggest that we get to you, or where would we identify maybe on the timeline here, specifically where those entry points might be?
Yes, thank you so much. That is a good question. Working groups is where we would love for citizens interested in specific subjects to be involved in. We're going to have 17 working groups under each of these action areas. These might increase based on, if we start to see that natural environment is not being able to be covered by one group, we may have to split these. We have secured locations. Right now is not a bad time, but we would like for steering committee and advisory council to be formed first, so that we have a board to go to get advice and make sure that we are going in the right direction. So they can start sending emails to us. We'll start putting them on the wait list until we have these two committees put together.
So just want to be sure I understand.
Yes.
Thank you. So I see working groups under phase three. So,
Yes.
so that's where I'm assuming sometime during the latter half of phase two is where those working groups would start to form.
The working groups, we hope to form those at the start of the phase two. However, they'll be working on phase three. I know, this is the mechanism is the document has been put just to make sure it makes some sense. But we are going to start assembling the working groups at start of phase two because we want their input just like any other community members' input. So the first couple of meetings would be the general comprehensive plan input and making sure that they understand this virtual form that they can interact and some of the logistics. And then eventually moving into, as we get more feedback from the community, we'll say, okay, so far on housing side, this is what we've gathered. Housing working group, what do you think? How do we move forward from here?
Thank you, Vasu. Do you have an email address that you can share to David, and David can push that out to us, that we can
Absolutely.
direct citizens to reach out to you by way of email?
Absolutely, and I will get that to David. And in general, mcrpc at mecplan.org. We'll get all those emails through that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Alderman Lauer.
Yes, I want to thank you also for joining me in my recent ward meeting and coming to speak with us, and I hope we can do that again.
Thank you.
And I'm very encouraged by the fact that we're trying to involve directly the citizen, engaging and getting them involved. I think that's very important. Many of my constituents and folks throughout the community are very concerned that we use the actual vision that they have for the community, keeping Bloomington Bloomington,
Hmm.
and maintaining our austerity and the culture that we have had here for many generations, as a matter of fact. One of the things that I think that I'm troubled by, however, is the fact that this is really driven by a federal requirement. They're required to do this, every 5 years, I believe, and the expense at this point. I think we need to be very focused on the fact that this is going to have to be limited by the expense, and how do we go ahead and accomplish everything that you're trying to do here
Hmm.
without breaking the bank here, being effective, but yet keeping it within the realm of where it needs to be. Again, I keep repeating myself, but I bounce things off a couple of former leaders, one of those being former Mayor Smart, and he said, go down the hall and open the closet. There's probably a stack of those comprehensive plans. So we just have to keep in mind, keep it all in perspective here. If we're spending money on this, we really probably ought to keep it in light of our current budget crisis. We need to keep it to a minimum, just to keep things in check.
Alderman Lowe, can I quickly answer
Sure,
that?
sure.
One, Regional Planning Commission is providing the comprehensive plan update to the city at no additional cost to the city. So whatever we are doing is part of our intergovernmental agreement with the city.
Right,
There
I
will not be
understand
any
that,
additional
but you're
cost.
also,
Yes.
the region is
Yes.
having to pay your salary.
Absolutely.
We're part of that.
No, I'm not
Okay.
discounting that fact.
Okay.
But two, I am very sensitive to the plans that sit on the shelf, which is why I'm a huge proponent of community engagement. I think as long as we keep that in perspective, I think as long as we bring input in and the plan reflects that input, I think it won't sit on shelf as plans that don't reflect that input. And I'm hoping that this plan would be one of those.
Well, I understand that, but again, what's the cost of implementation? And is
Yes.
it really something that we have to do right now? Because we have an awful lot on our plate, and it's going to come into play here real shortly. Couple of the more finite points in here, just to try to help me understand. Under phase one on page 2, we talk about a rapid population growth. And to my knowledge, we're not really forecasting a very unfortunately, we're not forecasting a very rapid population growth. As a matter of fact, we may be looking at a decline in some demographics, unfortunately, because of a couple of things that are happening with our business community. So I'm wondering if our data, it may be a little bit dated. It concerns me. Over on page 9, we look at best practices review under strategic planning, and it talks about accessory dwelling units. Can you fill me in on what that might be? Is that public housing or?
No, this is first of all just an example of how other communities are doing various things. When I say best practice reviews, there are communities that are struggling to accommodate newer housing. So they went ahead and started reviewing what they have, and they started accommodating grandma flats or mother-in-law flats, and depending on the region, people call these differently. But some of those are zoning requirements strictly say one dwelling unit per parcel. They're trying to adjust those to make sure that their needs are met. Again, that did not mean to say that that's what we need here. That's just an example of how communities are thinking outside the box.
All right, well, thank you very much.
And just to clarify on that, I think it might be depending on our definition of rapid, but at least we've been gaining 1,000 people a year in Bloomington, and that may begin to change or level off.
That may, and actually, I also would like to address that because one, population growth or decline is hard to predict, and comprehensive plans try to predict 35 years into the future. So what we want to do is we want to do something like a scenario planning, like what ifs. What if we have this growth? What if the trend of growth continued? What if the trend of growth did not continue? The projections can only go so far, and then I think we absolutely have to use some scenario planning here and say if it continues this way, these would be the recommendations. And your point is very well taken. It is not meant to say that the growth that we were referring to was the growth until this point. There was a rapid growth up until this point.
And also, just to clarify the comprehensive plan before I move on, the planning process that you've mentioned is going to be fundamentally different from anything that would have been done 20, 30 years ago under Jesse Smart or other previous mayors, even 10, 15 years ago, correct?
Absolutely, yes. And, and scenario planning is becoming increasingly common because the big corporations that once made communities their home are changing for various reasons. Then this is not just facing Bloomington normal area, this is across the country. So planning has to adapt to the newer ways of doing business.
Thank you. Let's see. Next on my list here is Alderman Fruin, then Black, and Stearns.
Thank you. I'll shorten my comments in view of the time and the other lights, but through the presentation tonight in the Law and Justice Center presentation of the joint councils and the meeting before that, I'm very, very encouraged by your efforts and your energy to reach out because it's hard to get our community engaged in a lot of these feedback and things. And we've done pretty well at it in some of our things, but
Thank you.
this is so huge that this is more than Bloomington. It's more regional. And so I applaud you for all your different ways that you anticipate trying to reach out. I hope that you can get it done.
Thank you so much. And I have to really applaud the community. Bloomington Normal is a very engaged community. I think the minute we make it slightly easier, it probably will be easier to gather the input. I am going to fall back on my bike planning information gathering, and we've received 750 responses back so far. And I think the community has responded well. And there are lots of interest groups in the community that are conducting good business. So we are going to tag along and build on their efforts. For example, the Wellness Coalition is a great group going on. There is no need to repeat what they've done, so we are going to kind of build on what they've already done. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Alderman, let's see, Black. Oh, excuse me, also Fazzini. We need to be very quick then. Okay. Excuse me, I think it's Alderman Black, Stearns, and then Fazzini.
Okay. We'll stay in order then. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for putting this together. I especially, and Alderman Sage referred to it, your presentation at the joint meeting was excellent. And I remember you had played a video. Was that from
Yes.
Lake Oswego?
Yes.
That's the kind of thing that we need to be doing here. And I've been talking to some constituents who have kind of been baffled as to, they're like, well, why don't we have more of a plan? Why isn't there more of this going on? So this is a step in that direction. And I absolutely applaud going out into the community to solicit information as opposed to just having a meeting and see who shows up.
Yep.
That's going to be huge. But if I could trouble you to go back to the phase one option here on the scope of work where you have the timeline of the project. It's a little different than the one we have in our pamphlet. I love this PowerPoint, by the way. Actually,
Thank you.
This guy. So I'm seeing here that you have the scope of work, and then you got city council, and then you're providing data, established steering committee, data analysis, and I'm seeing city council pop up on here twice. And you've referred to the bike plan.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's been going out, and I've gotten some feedback about some people expressing concern that there's no option,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that has come from the city council.
Yes.
This isn't something that we necessarily reviewed,
Yes.
and so it's hard for me to answer to why it's like that when I haven't seen it prior to that point. I'm not asking you to bring in the survey to get a council approval on it, but it'd be nice to at least solicit some feedback from us,
Absolutely.
especially if our name is attached to those types of studies,
Absolutely.
because that's important, and these are the things that people want to be able to be participative in, because, again, we're accountable to the folks in the community.
Most definitely,
So
yes.
I guess it's more of a process
And-
standpoint.
Yep, absolutely. And we've heard that comment as well. Unfortunately, with the bike one, we actually got engaged after the council approved doing a bike plan. So we went forward with gathering input for how to conduct the bike plan. But after gathering some of that feedback, we definitely are going to come in front of council, make sure that, and again, that's why you guys have a lot of important business. We definitely want a steering committee and advisory council to make sure that we are on the right track, and we can keep going back to them on a constant basis.
Certainly. And again, I'm not looking for, micromanagement or, council
No.
approval, thumbs up on everything that comes through this, because we have committees for that kind of work. But it's nice to be in the loop on what's going on, so when we do get those questions, we're able to answer them without burdening your staff.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
absolutely. Thank you.
Alderwoman Stearns, and then Alderman Fazzini as quickly as possible. Thanks.
I think I can do this in about 30 seconds. We need a cost. This is a tremendous effort.
Mhm.
And we need to know what is this costing, because
Okay.
it's costing someone,
Yes, yes.
probably the taxpayer ultimately. And in turn, this is a huge, huge, huge scope.
Yes.
Time, of course, is money.
Yes,
So I'd like to have a number
Okay.
on the cost of this,
absolutely.
just to present to people. And the second thing would be the current plan that we'll be updating, the one that we've already got.
Yes.
It would be really great to see that plan, its some really specific deliverables, and to know where are we with that plan.
Okay.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Fazzini.
Yes, Alderman David asked City Manager David for information, and I think that's a good thing. I also noticed that we have a page here that's almost empty and a back that's got nothing on it. It would be good if we had your name, email address, phone number, and your staff with email addresses and phone numbers in this document with a little note. If you want to participate in some way, please call us.
Yes, you will see this is essentially the scope of work, and we left these intentionally blank for your notes, but we will change that going forward with all the communication materials. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we are out of time.
Could I
Oh,
just,
yes.
yeah, very
um,
briefly, a couple of quick things. We will be using billing inserts to get more information. It'll be a little more condensed, but hopefully each household working with VSU, we want them to know, who they can contact, what to expect. We'll be having things on our webpage, spotlight articles, et cetera. So as Vasu said, this is kind of for your information, but we'll have a lot of this information out there for people. I also just want to mention, in talking with the mayor, we have recommended that the mayor and 2 aldermen serve on the steering committee. That's one thing Vasu's looking for. And I have encouraged and committing myself and our senior leadership staff to be very involved in this process. I think we're looking for a real, for lack of another term, a real game changer in the comp plan going forward. It really needs to be something that is owned by the citizens, not just by elected officials or staff. I think this has great potential to help not only the council, planning commission, zoning board of appeals, all our groups, to better articulate what do our citizens want, not what do we want. So we'll have more information. In the future, we'll talk a little bit more about sub-area plans, the role they might play going forward to help the council deal with sometimes some very confrontational, contentious issues, especially on development around undeveloped land. So we'll have more to update you on, but we definitely wanted to make sure the council was involved in many steps in this process, not just at the end. So that's what Vasu, I compliment Vasu and her staff, many of which are here tonight. I think this is an extremely, creative and innovative process they put together, and I'm looking forward to it, and I hope council will allocate time for you to be involved in as well. So thank you, Vasu.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
so
Vasu.
much
And
for those comments.
again, also, you and your staff for all the work you put into this. But we also would like one thing, Alderwoman Schmidt and I have a little bit of envy because we don't have the booklet that Alderman Fazzini was referring to. So if we could get copies of that, I'd appreciate it. Oh, awesome. Whoa, and she delivers. Thank you. All righty. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to the next item on our agenda. Item 3C, term limits for elected officials, and we are starting at 37 minutes past the hour, so we have about 30 minutes for this. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Alderman Fruin, who is the origin of this request. Alderman Fruin.
Thank you, Mayor. And I guess with that comment made, that I want to make sure that this is not a Jim initiative, that this is really an initiative generated by the public, started a couple months ago. And also I appreciate the support of the council members that said yes to the willingness to at least discuss this. So I'm not here with a hard agenda. So to make sure I'm clear, I'll probably do a little bit of reading here to get us started, and then I'll be quiet and I'll listen to my colleagues. But I wish this topic was a little fresher, but it's been a couple months. But yet it remains very concerning to the public, to some in the public. It's an ongoing and important issue to them. Tonight's discussion focuses on the position of alderman, and the discussion is not intended to be enlarged to debate the process of mayoral appointments or individuals to our boards and commissions, nor the alderman position of an appointed position. The impetus of this discussion tonight were questions from the public following the actions our governing body took to place term limits on those who serve on our boards and commissions. As a reminder to those in the audience, our council unanimously approved an ordinance limiting the terms of boards and commission members at our city council meeting on January 13th. The public's question that followed our adoption of the ordinance was, shouldn't the same philosophies, principles, and guidelines be placed on the alderman position as well? Some see the action to be inconsistent and incomplete if what we apply to others does not apply to ourselves. They ask the question, why is it so concerning to formalize an ordinance for others if you don't apply the same thinking and concept to yourselves? So, as that question was presented to me back in January, I quickly agreed with their rationale that we should be consistent in our actions and walk the talk ourselves.
So with that said, I too feel it's in the public's interest to be consistent with our recent ordinance approval, and we place term limits on ourselves. I'll pause here for a second and say, I'm not going forward with this on some mission to be active in this. I just think it's something that we should be discussing tonight, and so I'm glad we're here. So my intention tonight is simply to be responsive to the public and have an open discussion among the council members. I would hope the discussion could be constructive, positive, and specific as to whether our aldermen feel term limits should apply to ourselves as we have placed on our board and commission members. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may have just a couple of comments, but before I do, and I'll keep mine to 30 seconds or less, if I could see who would like to speak to this. Alderman Black, Alderwoman Stearns, Alderman Lauer, Alderman Milowamboy, Alderwoman Schmidt. Okay, I got you. So most everybody. Okay. Let's just in terms of a clarification, just so everyone in the audience understands, there was a limit of 9 years on board and commission appointments that the council approved, that Alderman Fruin mentioned. Just to clarify, that was the actual time frame. This was something that came out of a discussion with Alderwoman Schmidt and Alderman Sage and I over the summer as we were going through and trying to help clean up the process of board and commission appointments. Again, the day that I was sworn in as mayor, there were 59 either vacancies or expired terms in our boards and commissions. And many hadn't been reappointed or even attempted to be brought to the city council in many years. And at least my take on things was that many of our boards and commissions had a sense of entitlement and were somewhat isolated from the elected officials. And so that was my thought, and in the discussions that the three of us had, we came up, or actually I think it was probably Alderman Sage, I shouldn't say we. I didn't really have come up with that part of it. I certainly thought it was probably a good idea for board and commissions because they're not elected, right? The only means by which they're held accountable to citizens is through their elected officials, right? And at least elected officials, I think, are different in one way, and that is if people really don't like us, they can dump us in the next election, right? And have. So just a little bit of clarification with that, and then I'm going to move, I believe in the order, Alderman Black, then Stearns, Lauer, Milowamboy, and Schmidt. That's the order in which I noticed you. Oh, and Fazzini. Okay, so Black, Stearns, Lauer, Milowamboy, Schmidt, and Fazzini. So maybe about 2 minutes or to 3 tops.
Yeah, I shouldn't take that long. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Jim, for bringing this up. I think this is an important topic, and it was a question that I got, too, at a neighborhood association meeting. Where's that double standard? And in this case, I think that a board and commission appointee is subject to, they're not really on most of the public's radar. Most people can't name, a couple people on various boards and commissions. I mean, but these are the ones that are making decisions, making recommendations, and so the accountability gap is there. It's hard for someone to reach out directly to, say, a library board member or more challenging for them to reach out to a building commission meeting, but it's a lot easier for them to reach out to the alderman. And to me, it's about finding that accountability gap, and I think my term limit would be an election. So if I go off the reservation and the citizens don't want me anymore, there's my term limit. And if I decide to run again, boom, there you go. So that's trying to be able to find that difference. And that's why I think that the boards and commission appointees should have to take some time off and be held accountable through a mechanism, whereas the public officials are held accountable by the public.
You've mentioned something else I did not clarify. I apologize. The board and commission limit doesn't mean you can't come back. You just take a year off from serving on that board. You can apply the very next year. And I think that was one of the models that some of the other private boards and commissions have, that no matter how much we love you, even if we think you're Gandhi, after a certain time, we want you to take a year off, get a little perspective, and then you come back. Right?
Or you can go on to another board and commission, right?
Yes, and that's something actually we need to clarify, because I think that there's some language in the ordinance that might require some clarity there. Because I think it was our intention not to prevent someone to going on another board. Right. Let's see. I have Alderwoman Stearns.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I apologize. I have to leave at 7, so I appreciate the opportunity to speak early, and I'll be happy to clarify my position, which is basically that a referendum to see what the public thinks would be absolutely fine with me. I think, that would be kind of the way to go. Um, Other than that, I just think ask the people, as many have said recently about asking the people. Um, there are pros and cons. There's no danger of us becoming career aldermen. We are, in essence, with our stipend, if you call it that, being what it is, volunteers. So there's no danger of us of us making a career, I don't think. The sad thing, really, for me, is the very, very low information of the public. People really, unless they watch the streaming, which we finally got, they don't really know what their aldermen are doing, what they're advocating for, what they're saying, what the difference is. And to me, that's very sad when the public's unhappy, for instance, with city council, as they may often be. I'm not sure. They're kind of unhappy, I think, generally with all of us. They don't really understand, who we are as individuals. So makes it very difficult, I think, for them to really know, unless they study it carefully. And I wish in my, if I had one wish, that everyone would do that they would stream, that they would study, that they would get to know beyond the media, because the media is just very limited and can't possibly tell you. So anyway, I mean, I realize that we reach out as individuals, and many people do know us, but unfortunately, many people don't. So I guess that is my comment, and my wish. I would say put it to a referendum would be fine with me. But people just need to understand city council, I think, in general, better to make good decisions. And I'm so glad we are streaming, and hope that they use that to see what their aldermen are really saying and doing. Thank you.
Thanks. And just to clarify, a referendum would be advisory only, and the next time that could be on the ballot, just like the soccer complex situation, would be in the November general election. Alderman Lauer, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. Um, at first glance, and from the outside looking in, as I am the new alderman here, um, and looking at my perception, and probably a very common perception in our community, was that we are much like our state representatives, our state senators, our federal representatives, and our federal leaders, in which they have a tendency to get entrenched in their position and make a career out of it. After reading the extensive background legal precedent-setting legislation that's passed in the state of Illinois, there currently are about half a dozen or so small communities that are mainly in the collar area of the Chicago proper area, so the suburbs, that have done this, and having family and having spent a great deal of time in that area, I kind of understand their thought process up there. Um, they're a different animal than we are here in Bloomington. And this is a different form of government than my perception of state representation or federal representation. Like Judy said, this is not a career position, and gosh, you'd have to be a maniac to want to do this forever and ever. It's a lot of time and effort, and most of it is volunteer. And you've really got to have your heart in it to do a job at all. So that being said, I read through what was provided here, and I really feel that with the city manager form of government, and the form of government that we have here in Bloomington, provided that does not change, I really don't see the point in uh, even having a referendum. I don't think, if the citizens actually understood how the design for our city government and how our city government does work, uh, that they would really need to have a referendum at all here either. It is very easy for, and I'm a case in point, though it was a lot of work and it was a lot of expense, anyone would qualify to run for one of these positions, and it can be done. Uh, and looking at, even some of the seniority here, Jim, how many terms have you had? A number, yeah. And
Two-year term's been appointed a couple times.
have you even had anybody challenge you? Well, this is the case in point. Really, we have citizen involvement apathy here in Bloomington, and we would really like to encourage more folks to get involved and actually run a campaign and run for one of these offices. And so, you know, from that aspect, I really don't think that our history is proving the requirement for term limits for these positions. Thank you very much.
Alderman Muller-Wampoy.
Okay, thank you. I too read the extensive report, and when I read it, I kind of came up with a couple of, well, not just a couple, but several questions. You know, typically when you're trying to do something new, my first question is, what are we trying to solve? You know, is it that huge of a problem? And as I asked myself that question, I came up with a couple of other observations. For example, what is the history of turnover with the position, either voluntary or through election? You know, and as I've been here for 3 years, I've noticed that we've had quite a bit of turnover. So it's not that citizens don't have the opportunity to be able to run and be on the council. And we had more than one uncontested election for the past 3 years. um, so that's also an issue, uncontested elections at times. Um, we would also need to further study what would be needed to fully understand what applies to Bloomington. That's another thing we have to do, because part of the research that I saw in there says that we can't necessarily apply what has been learned in Tinley Park or other places and use it to guide what we're going to do in Bloomington. Um, Another thing that I thought about is to beware of unintended consequences. There could be a loss of interest over time. So as Alderman Sage, you know, likes to say, you know, we have to build a bench, but what if the bench is empty? What do we do? Because we forced um, that, that uh, we forced our system to get into this sort of turnover mode. Um, the other thing that I've also noted that there's not a lot of research in this area, so it's fairly new. So in my opinion, it is, you know, I'd like to use, I don't know if Scott is here, but I know computer folks, when somebody comes up with something new, you like to wait for about 5 or 6 years to see, is this really working? You know, don't go with the latest version of Windows because you want to let others try it and see how it works. Okay, so it seems to me that this is fairly new. For the past 4 or 5 years, people are experimenting with this, and we don't have a whole lot of research on it. I think that would be a great research project for a political scientist.
Done it 22 years ago.
There you go. For Bloomington, though. um, I think the other thing that I wanted to say is that typically when you make change, I mean, I've seen it enough that when you make a change, you're simply trading problems. And the question is, which ones are you willing to deal with? Which one are you willing to live with? So I don't think this will necessarily be the answer to what we're looking for. And, you know, last thing that I would say, of course, you know, education is always the key. We have to make sure that people know what it is that they're getting into and whether they're willing to live with it down the line. So,
Just as you were doing that, I was kind of doing the math around here, and all of us have come in the year of 2007 with, or more recently, except for Alderman Fruin and Alderwoman Schmidt. So, yeah, I mean, 8 of the 10 of us are within the last few years, 6 years. So, anyway, let's see, along the lines here, Alderwoman Schmidt and then Fazzini.
Um, I will just add to this chorus. I do think that there's a distinction between the boards and commissions and the actions we took there. I know Dave and I worked really hard at defining or discovering best practices with boards and commissions. Our accountability is every 4 years. and there has been a lot of turnover. I agree with Judy. I think that if we're going to enact this, well, I don't think we should enact this. I guess that's my point. We could enact this, but I think it does. This is not a decision that belongs to us. It belongs to the people who elect us and whom we represent. And there's an enormous amount of very valuable information sitting in the documents that we got with our committee packets tonight. It'd be great to have a group like League of Women Voters distill that, pros and cons, and have someone, not us, lead an advisory referendum if that's the will of the people, so to speak.
Okay. Alderman Fazzini and then Alderman Fruin.
I think if we had shorter terms, we'd have more fresh ideas. If we got wider engagement from the public, I mean, who would want to run against Jim Fruin? He's going to go uncontested every time. If he weren't running, we'd probably have 2 or 3 people run. But if he runs, we're not going to get anybody. So I think that one is sort of the one side or the other. I think if people take a year off, after having gone to 6 other city councils and sitting on that side, it was amazing how much I learned. Uh, I saw how you see us, and I saw the facial expressions on the people who were up in the council, and I don't see that when I'm up here. I see it when I'm over there. And there were quite a few other things I learned by going out there. And I think if somebody serves 8 years and takes a year off, they'll probably come back reinvigorated and be doing a better job. I think the referendum is a good idea. This is something for the voters to decide, not the 10 of us who are elected.
Alderman Fruin.
Mayor, do I have the last word?
I think you do. I think give under the circumstances you deserve the last word, and then we'll stop. We're just about running out of time, so
Great.
Go for it.
I think this will help save us a lot of energy going forward. I'm trying to anticipating the reporter's question. The reporter's question is, where do you go from here? Because I've heard some different things, but for my purposes and for those that approached me to put this on the discussion tonight, I think it served the purpose it was intended to serve. Public just wanted some discussion about term limits. They got that tonight in the last 30 minutes. I think the differentiation between boards and commission and council members was a theme. So here's my statement that I have no plans to take this forward. I don't have any plans to initiate any community activity. I think those types of things, as has been said, that needs to be coming from others and not, at least from not for myself. So good discussion, and I wish we've all got a lot on the plate, and I wish we had time for these kind of discussions on different issues, philosophical and guidelines and so forth. I do thank those that agreed to put this on there tonight. So we always talk about taking things off our plate. As far as I'm concerned, we take this one off our plate.
Maybe give it to the League of Women Voters.
Oh, that's somebody else's decision, not mine, but thank you. Thanks, everybody, for the discussion.
Thank you. All right. At this point, we have end with city manager's comments, and then we will be adjourned. Mr. Hales.
I just wanted to remind everyone, we'll have our budget work session this Saturday. We will send out a notice, and as you know, it'll be over in the Osborne room beginning the date. So please plan on a full day, and we'll get out a little bit more detailed agenda as we continue to work, put that together.
I have a question on that. Is the start time correct? It's 8?
8 a.m., yeah.
We start, okay.
Yeah, that's what we...
Just clarifying. It was on my cell phone too, at 8 a.m. And when Alderwoman Schmidt mentioned this, I said, yeah, I remember seeing that. Is that 8 a.m.? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no gym for me on Saturday.
Some would like to even get it started earlier and then get done earlier. I don't know. Maybe that was someone from a previous group of elected.
Alderman Lauer, he's up like before 4 a.m.
Mayor, Reveille is at 5 a.m. if you'd like, sir. We could provide.
I'm sorry?
Reveille is at 5 a.m.
Alderwoman Stearns.
Just a really quick question. Any possible way we could stream our budget session?
Any possible way we can stream our
I'd
budget
like to put in
session?
a plug for doing that.
Scott?
I'll just say that we're really set up well to do that here in this room. We haven't traditionally, not to say that's right or wrong.
Is there any reason why we
on
can't
work
have it here
sessions.
then? Oh, except is it on our website?
Pardon?
Is the location for it on the Osborne Room already on our
No,
website?
we have not posted the official agenda. So there
Okay.
could be a change
Are we
to
okay
that.
with doing it here and live streaming it? Awesome. Okay. Be there or be square. And if if this may not be, it might be reality TV. It's not going to be, it's not going to be a bestseller. But anyway, we look forward to it. I think at this point, unless I see anything else, we're adjourned and we'll see you on Saturday. Sure. Yeah. Good. Oh. Too late. I'm already. See you. Thanks, John. Thanks. Appreciate it. And I'll see you tomorrow.
Monday.